I got chronic fatigue syndrome before 30. Just completely sideswiped myself into bed and never got up again for about a year.
What actually happens if someone doesn't goal set?
Goal setting is about giving the brain great direction, why it gets up every day. Our brain actually needs a map. It needs to know, where are we driving to? What's the next town?
Such a great analogy.
We find that a lot of young people are going through extreme burnout because they've got no boundaries. Your life is first. Your business will fit the life.
You're right. It's like I have my business and my life fits into it. For our listeners out there, including myself, how do you take that first step to flipping it? Welcome to the show, Shannah. I am so excited to have you here. Let's kickstart by you sharing with our audience what exactly it is you do.
Oh, I love that question because it's so broad, So, I started being a life coach over 20 years ago, and I studied when nobody had even heard of life coaching ever before. And it was really to coach elite athletes into retirement because they didn't know who they were without their job, without the sporting club, or their identity really was in their athletic prowess. And so for me, it was a big hole in the market, and I thought no one had a life plan. So I studied to become a coach and to really help people develop a life plan, because your whole life is a business. It's not one section of you, your career or your health or your wealth creation. We actually need a broad plan to build the other plans within. So it's a big question because life coaching it's a lot broader than what people think. It's like having that personal trainer, but for your whole life to take you to another level.
Wow. At what point do you think someone needs to engage with a life coach?
Well, I got my first one at 30, and that's actually how it all started for me, because I'd married my job in my 20s. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have married their job. It's 7 days a week over there. For me personally, I loved my job. I was in corporate sport, so Jerry Maguire, athletes, sports on the weekend. I'd go and watch them compete, and it was all to represent a great brand. And for me, it was like heaven in my 20s. Burning the candle at every end, no self-care strategy, a really high achiever, a perfectionist, an A-type sort of go-getter. And for me, it cost me my health. So, I got chronic fatigue syndrome before 30, just completely sideswiped myself into bed and never got up again for about a year. So I actually got my first life coach then, which no one had ever heard of. But because I had been around coaches for so long in sport, I was like, well, everyone has a coach, so I'm going to get one. And that's how we started with, this is how you set a goal. This is how you reset yourself. You have to come home to self.
Wow. You never consider getting a coach for life. There are coaches, like you said, for so many other aspects in life. You've got your business coaches, you've got your personal training coaches, you've got coaches in so many other elements, but we never really think about ourselves and our lives from like a holistic view. So it's quite interesting. So what are the consequences of not goal setting? Because I know you mention and talk a lot in your books about setting goals and achieving them and planning. So what actually happens if someone doesn't goal set? Because I know a lot of people listening to this podcast probably never actually set a goal or have tried to set a goal and have not achieved it. So what is the consequence of not setting goals?
Well, it's enormous actually, because our brain, and you've spoken to a lot of neuroscientists, our brain actually needs a map. It needs to know, where are we driving to? What's the next town, So I think of your life plan as your trip around Australia, for example, and this is the trip of your life. And the goals are, all the towns that we're going to stop in. So if you don't have the vision for yourself and your big 20-year vision for yourself, and you don't have some goals set based actually on your own set of values, not the person next to you, but your own, then you really are you're just taking chances a lot of the time, but you might not end up where you actually want to. So goal setting is about giving the brain great direction, why it gets up every day, the purpose of why you get up every day, and it all should reflect right back to your values.
That's such a great analogy. I actually didn't think about goal setting in that sort of length, because for me it's very much 6 to 12 months, right? It's like, what do I need to achieve for for the business in the next 12 months, in the next 6 months, in the next 3 months, in the next month, and then in the next week. But you often forget about that lifelong goal. Where do I want to be in 10 to 20 years? Does that really make a difference when you start setting goals, that bigger vision?
Well, there's a great speech for you to go and Google, Matthew McConaughey's Oscar speech, where he talks about his role model being his 10-year-older self. So when you think of your 10-year-older self, you think about, wow, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be financially? Where do I want my health to be? What circumstances are going to change? So if you have children, they'd be at a different age, or they might have moved out, or your dog will be 10 years older, or your parents will be 10 years older. You can very quickly see that the landscape is going to change. From there, you can really think about, well, how do I want to feel in the next year? So we always say plan in decades, always plan in decades, but think in years. So year 1. So that's that first town that we want to get to towards our trip around the country. So when we think in years, then we can go, okay, what are the big goals of the year? Maybe 2 or 3 only. And then we can really plan in months. And when we plan in months and weeks, it allows you to be mindful. It allows you to be present and live in the day, because if you're driving without that GPS in the car, you are nervous the whole time. You are like, are we going the right way? Am I taking things in? I've got to read the signs. You're actually not enjoying the drive. But if you've got your GPS in the car and you're just following directions, you sit back and you enjoy the journey. You're not stressed. You're taking in the towns, you're taking in the landscape, aren't you? Yeah. Very, very different for the brain. So goal setting is fundamental for inner harmony. It really is.
Why do you think people don't actually achieve their goals?
Because I think, number one, they don't know how to set them. They don't have a clear vision. I think they have a fear of failure and also a fear of success. And I think they let perfectionism get in the way. So fear of failure is, I don't care if I fail. I want to be driving. I want to be moving forward. Fear of success comes with a lot of responsibility. So if it's successful, what does that mean? If the company is successful, if, I really love this guy and then we get married, that comes with a lot of responsibility. So I think a lot of people have a lot of fear around goals rather than seeing them as just an exciting, joyful play in the playground that I'm going to go and try that ride and I'm just going to go and have fun and enjoy.
We often set goals for career and business, but we neglect life goals. What are some goals that you believe people neglect that we should start thinking about? So like, for example, should we be setting more goals when it comes to like family or marriage, or like, are there any, I guess, trends or things that you've seen that people often neglect when it comes to goal setting?
Yeah, I think people have forgotten a couple of things, which is number one, health. They just think weight loss. They're not thinking health. They're not thinking about the soil, like your health on the inside for longevity. So a lot of people are probably doing diets and things for the wrong reasons rather than really going inwards and thinking about what do I need at this age and stage of my life and what do I need to be doing now for my 10-year-older self. So I think people don't plan their health properly, and they also, which allows them to feel how they want to feel. You don't want to be dieting and always feeling like, oh, I'm just on this restrictive life all the time. And I think people forget about life experiences, and it's a really big one, is that when you do a 20-year plan, you actually think about the life experiences that you want along the way, because they don't come to your front door on a silver platter. So if you want a sabbatical, for example, so I've had a 6-month sabbatical and I've got a year 1 coming up. That means I'm taking a break from the world. I'm traveling, I'm going to the mountains, and I'm living in Greece or whatever I want to do. That doesn't happen without planning and saving and doing the research. People who have children say, oh, I haven't had a holiday or we haven't had a life experience properly. It's because they didn't plan it in. So me being at the other end, love being an older guest on your podcast, is over the last 20 years, I've had exactly the perfect experiences that I wanted with my family, with my kids at all the different stages, capitalising on what is the best thing for each age and stage. And I think it's really important.
I'm guilty of this. I tie a lot of my life experiences with my goals. So how do I stop that from happening? Because I say, okay, I'm going to Europe, but I'm going to Europe once I achieve this, or I'm going to try for kids once I achieve this, or I'm at this stage of my life, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's like unintentionally goal setting. So it's kind of like setting a goal and then attaching a reward, but we never really think about setting goals for experiences. We always attach it as that reward incentive to a goal. Do you think that's the wrong approach?
No, I don't think so. I think we're all individual, but the way that I coach people is your life is first, your business will fit the life. So a lot of people, what they do is build a business and the life has to fit in. And unfortunately, over time, over 10 years, they've lost a lot of life.
Yeah.
They missed a lot of opportunities. They probably missed some pretty pivotal things in life that were really important to them. So for us, when we plan, we do the life first. Like, this is where you want to be financially. These are the experiences. Let's build a cracking business around it. Let's build your health right in so that you have sustainability and you don't burn out too. So we find that a lot of young people are going through extreme burnout because they've got no boundaries. They don't really have that set up properly. They've got business first and life second. And my challenge is flip it.
And for our listeners out there, including myself, how do you take that first step to flipping it? Because for me, you're right. It's like I have my business and my life fits into it. And I know so many people listening can relate to that, whether it's their own business or their career and they're working towards that. What is that first step that we can take in order to flip that and start focusing on life first, business and career comes second and fits into that?
Well, my big question to every listener is, who are you without your job? And it's a really...
Don't ask me that question on this podcast.
and this is how it started for me with elite athletes is, who are you without the football club, or who are you without being in a pool, for example? And we have to build the person first because the job comes and goes. Now, I've been in my job for 20 years. It hasn't gone yet. It's just stayed and got bigger and bigger. But there's been no regret. So I think the first thing is to say, in the next decade of your life, what are your non-negotiable experiences that you want? And how do I want to feel, and how do I protect the asset, which is yourself, your health? And health doesn't mean do I feel good, by the way. Health is, there's 4 amazing buckets of health that people don't talk about. One's your physical health, which is how you eat, move, sleep and breathe. So for the rest of your life, you can fine-tune that to whatever decade you're in. Then you've got your mental health, which is, your mindset and how you think and flowing with life and trusting and maybe not being such a perfectionist because that slows progress. Then you've got emotional health, which is your heart space, which is that kindness and compassion and that gratitude towards yourself first before you can give it to anybody else. And then you've got spiritual health, which is a sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself, and your business won't give you that. It's the community, it's the family, it's feeling like you're a part of something, part of the universe in some way. So, there's a lot of different things to be thinking about, and then you build a great business in around some of your non-negotiables.
Wow. The way that you just put into perspective is just incredible, because I'm sitting here like, yeah, that's definitely not what I do. Because just like some background history, the intent was never to build this business that I have today. It really just like fell on my lap through my own personal experience, saw an opportunity to really help, the community and share my own experience with losing weight, which was a sustainable and balanced way of weight loss. And essentially this business just came on the back end of that. And so business came first because it was not something that I wanted to do. Yeah. And so over the last 7 years of building the business that I have today, I've put my business first. And I travel a lot, thankfully, but there's been trips that I've wanted to do over the last 3 to 4 years that I've been like, I'm not going to do that now until I do this. And then I keep pushing it out and pushing it out and pushing it out. And finally this year I'm actually able to go on that trip. But
yay, high five you.
I know, high five me. But it was so attached to a business milestone. Yeah. Whereas it should have been something that I was like,
I wouldn't do that. Yeah.
And it just, this short conversation that we've had, I think we've only been going for 15 minutes, has already changed my perspective of how I should be setting life goals as opposed to just business goals. And I'm guilty of that. And I know so many people would be guilty of that as well.
We get very emotional about the business
Yeah.
instead of getting very emotional about our life.
Yeah.
And when we get very emotional about our life, we can let the business flourish. The business is going to take you on an incredible journey. You might meet someone on a plane, you might have an interview with someone and another door opens. You actually can't even predict a lot of what's going to happen in the business, but you really want to stay in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And you can have a great big goal, and I always invite people to plan in pencil because things change. We get curveballs. We might have an illness thrown at us or an accident thrown at us, or circumstances might change. So I always say plan in pencil. Wonderful. There's options to change. Set your goals in pencil. They may change.
Yeah.
But they give you an incredible roadmap for your brain. And from there, you build the habits that make it all happen.
I was going to ask about how often we should be revisiting our goals, but I'm going to park that for now, because how does one goal set? What is like the method that you tell your audience? I know in your books and just across all of the platforms that you have, in your talks and so on, how does someone goal set? What is your recommendation?
Well, I think the old story that people say is let's sit down and write some goals, right? So I would never do that with somebody. I'm quite different. I would say, how do you want to feel? And I would say, what's the vision for yourself? What are you trying to achieve here? What is the purpose of that? What's most important to you in your life, which are your values? So if people don't know their values and they're running a business, I would just stop right there and say, make sure you know your values, which are in all my books, etc. as well. But you have to know your personal code of conduct, that personal, my health comes first, my family comes second, my business comes third, whatever it may be. Then we build some goals. Okay, well, let's start with a goal in the first value. How do you want to feel with your health? And then you can set some great goals. From there, you create great habits to support the goal. Then you might say family, what are your non-negotiable goals there? And then business, what needs to happen in the business? And I'm really driven. I've written 8 books. I've got my vision board kits all around the world. I've coached over 1,000 people. I've raised 2 kids. I've kept my marriage for 20 years. I'm really fit. I'm in my mid-50s. We can do it all. We can absolutely do it all, but it's got to be in the right order.
Wow.
Because if we'd done it the other way around, I might not have a marriage, or I might not have been present for my kids, or I wouldn't have those experiences, or I wouldn't be fit. I wouldn't have been able to stay fit the whole way along without burnout. So I think it's about when you sit down to think about goal setting, it's not as simple as let's just set some goals. That's like New Year's resolutions that people do, which crucify people's confidence because they set maybe 5 or 6 resolutions. They're not emotionally attached to them. There's no depth to them. And then they don't do them. And guess what happens to the confidence? Oh, I don't really follow through. Or, I set them but I never do them. That's just so destructive. So I really invite people just have 1 goal or 2 goals or 3 goals and that's it. But make sure you love them and you want to visit that town and you want to get to that town and you've researched that town. And then you've also worked out how to pace your drive to get to that town without burning out. So learning to, once you've set a goal, is what are the habits that are going to get you there that will pace you so you don't burn out. So we talk about AM, your morning routine, how you pace the day, and then how you recover at the end of the day. Because we want long-term athletes, We're all athletes of life. We're all athletes of business.
This might be a personal question and you don't need to answer it. But what was that goal that you set 20 years ago?
20 years ago, it was, for me personally, is to become a high-performing human without any burnout. It was like, how can I never, ever let this happen to me ever again? Because it was so brutal. That fatigue in bed meant I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't shower myself. I couldn't get up. My first goal was to walk to the letterbox. And I was doing triathlons and I couldn't walk to the letterbox. So my goal was, my overarching big goal was, how can you live so intentionally that you feel great 80% of the time, and you never, ever let it go below 80%. So where are the boundaries? What are the habits? And the goal was to master the basics. You know, not go on all these fancy things, but come home to self and say, what is the basic non-negotiable things that keep you feeling full?
What are they for you?
For me, it's definitely, I have to be in bed by 10, 80% of the time. I have to be up at 6 moving my body. So when you wake up and you've had chronic fatigue, you feel like you've been hit by a truck. So the 3 M's I've been doing for 20 years, which is I get up, I make my bed, I move my body for 1 hour. So walk, yoga, Pilates, something for an hour. It's got to move and it's got to go outside. And then I do some very set mindful breath work where I train the brain about letting today be easy and effortless, letting today be joyful, you know, letting me feel like, oh, it's not another lunchbox, or it's not another podcast, or it's not another client, but it's all a playground. It's an adventure. So just approach with lightness and joy. And I think that's been pivotal for me. So those small things, I hardly drink any alcohol. I'm the first to leave a party, but I own it because I really never want to feel like that again. So yeah, there's some things, things like mastering the basics is a really big goal for me, which is how to breathe. So I call it the Roger Federer moments in my life. So we talk about pacing the day so we don't burn out. It's every time you go to the bathroom, you could take 3 deep breaths. You could take 3 breaths. So when I was in the bathroom before, 3 breaths. Wow, I get to go on another podcast. How joyful is that? Instead of rushing in here like a crazy woman, picking up my kids from school, it was 3 breaths before you walk in that gate. The kids do not want a crazy, burnt out coach. They want a mum, you know. So the 3 breaths every time I go into something different for 20 years has been calm, confident, grounding, never burning out feeling, because the nervous system is never feeling overwhelmed.
How do you measure success when you set goals? Because a lot of people talk about setting goals as SMART goals, right? So that you can actually measure your progress towards your goal, or you can measure success. What are your thoughts around techniques like that, or goal setting in that form when our goals are quite broad? Is it that you start to really narrow down those, you start becoming quite granular and specific with the smaller goals to then, I guess, allow you to see whether you're becoming successful in hitting that bigger goal? What are your...
It's like driving from Melbourne to Sydney, and we know that's part of the life plan. So we want to tick off the little towns as we go through them, right? So it's the same. We want to tick off some of those skills that we want to master along the way. So the breath, you know, if I'm in the supermarket taking 3 breaths in the longest queue instead of my usual self going to the shortest one, it's a big tick. It's like you just grounded yourself. So it's actually about the small goals that support the bigger goals. It's like writing a book, for example, is a big goal. Okay, how am I going to write the book? Well, I know you have to come back to your own personality. So everyone has a different way of doing things depending on your personality. Most people take a year to 2 years to write a book. I write them in 7 days. Because if it took me 2 years, it would put pins and needles in my eye. It's just too long for me.
7 days. No wonder why you've written 8 books.
I'm a bit ADD, you know. So I would rather book an Airbnb and sit there and destroy myself and work, 14 hours a day and hit nearly fatigue again, but do it and get in flow state and love it and be in the pages and not be interrupted and get it done and send it to the publisher. And for me, that's how I'll achieve the goal. So for other people, they might say, I'm going to write for half an hour every morning for a year. That might be their way. But whatever you do, you have to be ticking it off, because that's how the human brain works. It needs little rewards along the way. So I think it's about setting the goal, but what are the micro moments, because we need to celebrate.
So let's talk about motivation, because the one excuse that I hear thrown around all the time is, I don't feel motivated to do it. How do I increase my motivation? And I feel like a lot of people are using a lack of motivation as an excuse to hitting their goals, whether it be their grand goal or even just those micro ones. What are your thoughts on like motivation in general?
Yeah, well, firstly, we're not machines, right? So we can't be on 10 every single day and motivated to jump out of bed and hit the gym or stick to the routine every single day. So I think we need to actually be a bit kinder to ourselves with the discipline as well. Is that if we want long-term success and sustainability, it's a lot about being some non-negotiables along the way, and motivation comes, I feel, from visual stimulation. So if we write goals down and habit plans down and they're in the drawer, we actually forget about them and we're not inspired. But if we want to put our high performance Olympic elite athlete hat on, everything's on the wall, you know. You've watched Rocky and all these movies, they've got things on the walls and vision boards up there, they've got words up there. So for me personally, on my mirror, it is full of words. There's goals, there's values up there, there's quotes up there, all written in whiteboard marker. So for 20 years, I've trained my brain to start the day with the words that I need to stay motivated. It's like, yeah, protect the asset. Yeah, like just go for it, or you've got this, or control the controllables, or where your focus goes, your energy flows. So the wording is going in every day. Then I walk into the office and there's a massive vision board. And it reminds me, now that girl didn't look like that really, you know, cut by sitting on the couch. She went to the gym. Oh, she went to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym. So for a lot of people, the visual is very powerful. And a lot of people don't, because of the aesthetics, everyone likes everything to look so nice, they've forgotten the power of messing up the mirror and putting the vision board up. And I think they are absolutely incredible. They remind you of, you don't feel like it today, but you're going in this direction.
What about to-do lists? What are your thoughts
Love them.
on them?
Love. Oh my gosh. So the to-do list is really setting yourself up for the drive of the day. We're going through this town and this town and this town. So the to-do lists are very, very powerful. You're going to have them for the rest of your life until your last breath, I'm sure. We're never going to get through them. So being at peace with the fact that you'll never finish the to-do list, I think, is a really big challenge for young people. By the time you're my age, you've made peace with it. But do the important things first. Like really eat the frog. It's a book by Brian Tracy. It's about 30 years old. Eat the frog concept is always do the hardest thing on the list first. Just smash it and get it done. And the rest of the day will be joyful. Don't let it sit there all day and take your motivation. Because remember, when we first wake up in the morning is actually when our it's a peak moment for us, for our what do you call that? I've just had a brain fog. Your personal, why you wouldn't have a donut for breakfast, your self-regulation, that's the word. Your self-regulation peaks when you wake up. So it's easier to go to the gym then than at 4 o'clock.
Makes sense.
Yeah, or it's easier to eat healthy than at 4 o'clock you'll have the donut, but you're not going to have it for breakfast. So the morning is actually when you want to do the most important things on the to-do list.
And how do we remove distractions? Because there are so many distractions today. Notifications, social media, it gives us an opportunity to stop what we're doing and procrastinate. What would you, how would you suggest we remove distractions to really get our productivity at its highest?
Well, I think it's about, they're always going to be there, and I think it's a discipline thing. But if you're not really attached to your goals or emotional about your goals or really fired up about your goals, you will look for distraction. Because distraction's really nice. It means you don't have to do much. So it's about really setting things up. Like if you want to have your supplements every morning, I've got them right next to where the breakfast stuff is. Like it's just, you've got to set yourself up for success, I think, and a lot of people don't. They're just winging it.
Yeah. I find that when I'm trying to do something and it's something that I don't want to do when I need to eat the frog,
Yeah.
I'll pick up my phone and I'll be like, oh, I'll just check my notifications on Instagram. And then I'm on Instagram watching reels and 10 minutes has passed.
Half an hour is
Yeah.
gone. Yeah.
And it was because I was trying to avoid the one thing that I just really didn't want to do.
So that's about boundaries.
Yeah.
It's about saying, I've got to set some really clear boundaries because I really love scrolling. You know, so if you love scrolling or you love getting into Netflix and binge watching, great, but make it good. So give yourself, I'm allowed to scroll for 20 minutes twice a day, and that's the only time I'm allowed to do it. Or for me, like I do like watching Netflix at night, but I stretch in front of it for about 15 minutes before I hit the couch to make it work for me rather than just sitting on the couch.
And how do we become emotionally connected to our goals? Because you did touch on that. You said, well, if you don't have that attachment, then you're going to find a distraction. So how does one actually become emotionally attached to their goal?
Because I think you need to think about how will achieving the goal make you feel? How will you feel when it's done? And is that powerful enough for you? So, you know, writing a book, how will I feel? I'm writing it because I really would love to change someone's life. And I'd love to share my story. And it's not about selling 10,000 books in Kmart, which is great, or Dimmicks, fantastic. But tomorrow, that doesn't feel that good because I want to do it again. So it has to be a much bigger emotional attachment to birth a book, or you get an email from someone that says, oh, it changed my life. That's the emotion, not how many sales figures did I get, because that will never be satisfying.
No.
Because it's never enough.
And that's what people usually attach to, is that, oh, I want to sell, like you said, 10,000 copies or 10,000 units or whatever. It's not about how does that make me feel when someone is reading my book.
Yeah, or how many likes you get, or
Yeah.
how many people tune into the podcast. It'll never be enough. But what you could do is just love the moment of doing it. You could love that you've birthed that into the world, and you could be changing people's lives every day and you don't know. They might be listening to it while they're on a walk and you've changed their life, but you won't know. So you just have to trust the ripple effect. And I think what people do is just look at how many viewers or how many likes, and it's just not enough.
How often do you think we should be revisiting our goals?
All the time.
When you say all the time, how often is all the time?
I think every week.
Wow.
It's like, you know, I'm going to walk the Camino Trail. It's 800 kilometres, and every year I take women away walking around the world. And we walk parts of the Camino in Spain. I'm taking women walking through Tuscany. This year we walk about 30K a day. Wow. And the goals are set for the morning, for the day, and for the night. And then we look at the major goal again. So I think what's really important for everybody is you've got to have a look at, you know, has the landscape changed? Did something happen in the world? I've changed my mind because I met someone who's taking me this direction. So we do need to check in pretty regularly, I think, maybe every week, every couple of weeks.
And what about for those that feel like they're not getting any closer to their goal? They feel like they just keep failing and failing. Do you think that they're setting goals that are far too grand, that are not within reach? Like what advice would you give someone that just is really struggling to achieve any type of goal?
Well, I think they need to, sit down and say, well, why? Like if I had to walk into a gym on my own, I would fail because I just look at those weights and go, oh. But if I had a trainer there, I would be there every day. So what is the structure that is missing in helping you get to the goal? Is it a coach? Is it meeting someone to go walking with because you keep cheating on yourself and you stay in bed instead? Or the business goal, it might need, you know, a bit of a think tank and getting other people's opinions. I think it's about getting out of your own head a lot of the time and bringing in some people to help you say, how do we get to the next level? It's a bit like, you know how I said before, we're all athletes of life and athletes of business. Imagine you're an athlete and you want to get to the Olympics, but you've never had a coach or a team or a nutritionist or a physio or anyone coming in to support you to get to the journey. And I think for a lot of people, they're trying to do everything all alone and they become very insular, and then it's very hard to keep achieving that way. Absolutely. So I employ a coach myself every 3 years.
Wow.
Even though I am a coach and have coached for 20 years and coached over 1,000 people, I need someone to come in and who's not emotionally attached to me and have a look at the landscape.
Yeah. Keep you in check, right?
Yeah.
Keep you accountable.
Yeah, that too. But also, over a couple of years, we start making up stories in our mind, of course, because we justify everything. And it's great for someone to come in and hold up the mirror and say, is that what you really want? Or is that what you really think? Because I don't think that. So we get a little bit caught in our own mind. And with social media now, we've got the art of comparisonitis down pat and the art of addiction down pat. I think it does take someone to come in if you're getting stuck on your goals to just help maybe simplify things for you.
Yeah. Where do you write your goals down? So I know you mentioned on a whiteboard, you've got it there, you have, words of affirmation or reminders every day that you see and you absorb. But where do you actually write your goals? Do you have them in your notes? Do you have them in a notepad? Do you have them on a document?
Yeah, everywhere. So they're definitely on the mirror. They're definitely, I have like a pin board with my vision board on it, but I also have another one with the goals for every 12 weeks of the year. So I work in seasons. So we've got 12 weeks of winter ahead. What are the goals for winter? What are the goals for spring? What are the goals for summer? And I don't like to set many goals in summer. I want to be outside. I want to be having a great time. But in winter, when it's cold and dark and miserable, I'll probably set 3 times as many goals.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So for our audience that are listening, what are 3 tips that you can give them to effectively start goal setting as of tomorrow?
As of tomorrow, I would say sit down and work out what's most important to you in your life, your values, your top 3 values. Then I would think about where do you want to be in 10 years? And from there, only write 3 goals that you could do in the next year, in the next 12 months. And then sit with them and think about what are the micro habits that I could bring in today that will get me to that goal.
Shannah, thank you so much for joining me. That was such an inspiring chat. I took so much out of that personally. Putting life first, business second. Don't know how much my team are going to love hearing that, but that was great. And I know our audience would love that chat.
Yeah, thank you. And remember that the business will be better when your tank is full.
That's so true. So true. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you at the next one.